In 2012, the UK hosted their third ever Olympics. Scientists discovered the largest prehistoric penguin on record. The Gangnam Style music video came out. But most importantly, the internet started to get its first glimpses of the rise of the brave tangled dragons. To the uninitiated, the rise of the brave tangled dragons was a massive fan-made phenomenon that combines or crossed over four fandoms: Brave, The Rise of the Guardians, Tangled, and How to Train Your Dragon. It pretty quickly went super viral with tons of fan art, fan fiction, and maybe most famously fan edits and supercuts, which combine videos together to make it look like the characters were talking to each other, even though they belonged to totally different movies. Writer Sophia Orlando claims that this big four was so influential and gained so much attention that they could be considered the main basework for modern cross-shipping. Basework it was because even over a decade later, cross-shipping has regularly remained one of the internet's most favourite things to do. Most recently in 2025, Rodrina went viral after Twitter user Monia Lynn posted their fan art of the crossover ship of Regina George from Mean Girls and Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. But other famous examples include Superwholock, Full Out Equestria, or the Scoob Moon Busters, which I didn't know existed before I started researching into this, but I love it so much. With such a rich, deep history, crossovers have evolved to have probably about 1 million different formats and styles. But more broadly speaking, the fanlore article on crossovers lists 11 distinct types. I'm not going to go into every single individual one because I tried that and oh my god, it was so long, but the list consists of real world, actor, same name, shared traits, location, historical, same creator, death battle, character gets shipped with every fandom ever, and crackfit crossovers, which are where the topic of today's video originates from. If you've logged into any social media in the last 2 months, you've probably seen a lot of people talking about Project Hail Mary. If you've logged into Tumblr or any other online fandom space in the last 2 months, you've probably seen a lot of people talking about Bloodymary. Bloodymary is the latest notch in the internet's long-running history of cross-shipping, referring to the ship of Ryan Gosling and Markiplier, or as they're also known, Simon and Grace from Iron Lung and Project Hail Mary respectively. I'm a pretty regular Tumblr user, so I saw most of this unfold in real time, and from what I saw, the ship pretty quickly went from haha, wouldn't this be funny, to huh, to what is I think currently about 1,500 works on AO3 and about a metric 100 million ton of posts on Tumblr every single day. On a surface level, it's pretty easy to see why the ship came to be. Both of them were either highly anticipated already or got very popular very quickly, especially on fandom-centric sites like Tumblr, and they both share very similar themes and narratives. For anyone who hasn't watched either of these movies, this is where you might want to turn it off and come back later because I'm about to spoil like everything that happens. Iron Lung follows this guy, Simon, as he's sent down into a submarine to photograph points of interest on a map, but the submarine is actually sent down in this like massive blood ocean. He has some kind of mysterious violent past that he was in prison for, and it also earned him the nickname Butcher, so he's told that going down into the submarine will earn him his freedom. Him going down there would potentially also help his people find resources to survive, as one day in his universe, all of the stars just blinked out, which was an event known as the Quiet Rapture. There's a lot of lore stuff that I won't go into right now, but while he's down there, he's basically like hunted by this giant blood eel that has these really cute eyes I like, but also like a bunch of really scary teeth and stuff. Basically, the blood eel is made of like a bunch of other researchers that went down there before Simon, and they all got mutated by the blood ocean into this giant like monstrous creature. This creature and like the disembodied researchers all want Simon because Simon possesses data from their original research sub, like research and archival recordings and things like that, and it was to hunt him down so it can destroy all that data. Simon and his ship are also all getting like mutated by the blood at this point. At one point the walls are like coming alive and stuff, and he gets his arm stuck to one of the walls and he has to like fully rip it off. Simon also carries around this little charm with a sapling from the last tree, which is a tree that he was supposed to worship and protect on his home planet, Eden. At the end of the movie, the blood that's like mutating Simon and his ship also causes the sapling to mutate, and it grows really, really big, and it basically takes out Simon and the blood eel with it. And that's Iron Lung. In Project Hail Mary, middle school teacher Dr. Rylan Grace is sent up in space to try and save the Earth's sun from getting eaten by these little cells called astrophage. While he's up there, he meets Rocky, an alien from the planet Erid, sent on the same mission, and together they discover the substance called Taumiba, which effectively eats astrophage, henceforth saving both of their planets. The movie ends with both Grace and Rocky making it relatively safely back to Erid, with Grace now working again as a teacher. Both of these settings, life on Erid and the spaceship to Erid, are where the vast majority of Bloody Mary fanworks take place. I'm sure you guys can probably already see the similarities and differences. I actually watched both of these movies pretty much back to back to get the proper Bloody Mary experience for this video, and I wrote down some of my notes while watching. Both plots are basically Guy gets sent to a mysterious planet against his will and also to his death, but both movies have very different endings and tones. Both main characters are perfect for Tumblr and fandoms generally. Simon is mysterious and brooding, and Grace is very silly and nerdy. Both cry a lot. Grace from Project Hail Mary is sent to save the stars from dying. Simon lives in a world where the stars did die. As far as we know, I'm not too up to date on the lore, so correct me if I'm wrong there. Aliens. Evil and nice. Use of the colour red in very different contexts. Sent into space by a woman with 3-letter name that ends with va. And finally, loneliness that ends with togetherness, sometimes literally. When Bloody Mary was first hitting the streets, I did see a lot of people pretty quickly discussing the parallels and themes of both movies, but I also saw a lot of people from outside of the ship kind of wondering why it was a thing and assuming it was just another case of two random men get put together. While I do definitely see why people might think this, I think what's really interesting is the progression and expansion of the fandom outside of such a simplistic and maybe slightly obvious beginning. I wasn't kidding about the massive influx of fan creators. At the time of recording this video, the ship currently has just under 1,600 works on AO3 in the span of less than 3 months. Since it came out, I'm fairly certain Project Hail Mary hasn't left the Tumblr top 10 trending once, and it's been at number 2 for weeks now. And every time you click on the tag, there's tons of new fanart and fanfiction and headcanons and just general contributions to the fandom. I don't necessarily think Bloody Mary is going to be some timeless piece of fandom culture revered for generations to come, but I do think it's really interesting to look at how it got so popular so quickly and the infatuation people seem to have with these two characters. Why do people like Bloody Mary? When I was asking permission to use fanart in this video, I also asked every single creator that I spoke to why they like Bloody Mary. What's really interesting is that every single one of them talks about the parallels of the two films. Lure in a Way describes Grace and Simon as two sides of the same coin, for example, which is a sentiment that I've seen echoed all across the fandom. But the creators also value the potential for different interpretations where the medias themselves differ. Tu Harris pointed out that if you're a horror and or sci-fi enjoyer, you can lean into either direction you want when creating stuff. Similarly, Sir Noble Squid said that people can have fun with the science side of things as well as just the purely psychological side. Callan D4N, who creates swap AUs of the characters switch to one another's narrative, explains that their situations are so different that it's nearly impossible for the same outcome to happen in each movie if they were swapped. Everyone said this in a different way, but one artist that I talked to, Wigglebox, described the ship as a sandbox world, which I think perfectly sums up crossover culture. In Paul Booth's Crossing Fandoms, Superwholock and the Contemporary Fan Audience, he discusses the infamous Superwholock fandom and the methods fans use to link the individual texts together, a concept he terms intra-transmediation. Transmedia is effectively one story world with different elements dispersed through different media channels, as described by scholar Henry Jenkins. Think famous story worlds like Star Wars. It has the original movies, and then it also has like the TV shows like Clone Wars, it has the games, and then it has like one-off spin-off comic books. All of them are separate stories, but they're also connected and add to the original media somehow. Booth's concept of transmediation effectively refers to the different links and channels and stories that fans would develop to link these different medias together. In this instance, crossing over Supernatural, Doctor Who and Sherlock. The pathways and connections and stories that fans would come up with to transmediate these texts and link them together effectively meant that they were creating their own media to be fans of, where they could all exist at the same time. The same sandbox worlds that we currently see in Bloody Mary. You might be wondering why I'm gibbering on so much about crossovers and intra-transmediation and not the actual ship Bloody Mary. But as the Noble Squid describes the crossover, it lets you look at things from a different perspective when you try to bring two different worlds together. Right now, Bloody Mary is effectively operating within almost an entirely fan-created universe. It's not really one part Project Hail Mary and one part Iron Lung anymore. It's kind of its own thing. And as such, every single person is going to have their own different perspective, which I think is why we're getting so many fan works and fan creations. There is no canon, and it already started as a crack fix, so right now anyone can pretty much do whatever they want with it. As Tu Harris says, it being a crossover, you can't really say anyone's wrong for any of it. Tu Harris is completely right. Although the fanon did spread pretty quickly with ideas like Simon calling Grace Angel, which we'll talk about more later, or, okay, this isn't specifically related to the Bloody Mary universe, but everyone seems to have agreed on a very distinct and specific kind of Adrian design. And I find it so funny that it's so widely spread because I had to like triple check to make sure that it wasn't an actual canon design. I found this Reddit thread from 4 years ago by someone claiming to be Andy Weir. I say claiming because do we ever really know? It's the internet, but I did stalk his account and I'm pretty sure he's either incredibly dedicated or it is our man himself. Anyway, in the thread he posted a link to a doc that he'd written about Iridian biology, and it does unfortunately specify that Iridians have an average height of 50 centimeters, which contradicts most people's interpretations of Adrian as this like massive hulking boulder. And I know you're all saying, Eleanor, that's the average. Adrian could just be a massive outlier. Or all the Iridians are very small and Adrian is just so big that they bring the average height up by that much. I don't think that's true, but I do love Adrian's fan design, so let's please keep circulating this idea and just make Adrian even bigger. That would be awesome. Anyway, the fanon has spread really quickly, but it is still just a fanon, and I think right now people are just really enjoying playing in it. Project Hail Mary, which provides the settings for most of the works that these creations are set within, is objectively a really cool, fun and unique environment, whether you want them in a spaceship or just living life on Earth, both narratively and visually, as Wigglebox points out, because it's really fun to draw them and come up with ideas for their culture and the cool rug things that they wear, and they're aliens and that's awesome. And also just generally seeing how characters who are already very well liked interact and exist within these settings is very cool. It's a fandom, loads of people are having loads of different ideas and some of those ideas are inevitably going to clash. Before we go into this section, I just want to clarify that I don't really think any of these controversies are really controversies as such, but mashing the fandoms together and seeing how they disagree as well as just normally agree has created some really interesting discussions that I wanted to talk about further. I mentioned this earlier on, but early into the fandom's conception, a lot of people were really into the idea of Simon calling Grace Angel, both because Simon was supposed to die at the end of his movie, so he thinks he's in the afterlife, and because Grace is played by Ryan Gosling. But people have been pointing out this creates a pretty messed up power dynamic and raises the question of if Simon can even consent to a romantic relationship if he's in this like kind of headspace. I think when the idea was first circulating, people weren't really taking it that far or looking into it really deeply. But I do have a bit of a soft spot for this one because I've also seen people leaning into like the horror side of this concept, like how scary it must be to be mistaken for an actual angel in Grace's perspective and thinking that you're in the afterlife, and that's just kind of a perspective that I really love. Another big, but not really big, one is the concept of the Bloody Mary ship kind of interfering with the popular headcanon of Grace being asexual or aromantic. Although there's no explicit confirmation that Grace is asexual or aromantic in his movie, I think people just really like the theme of platonic friendships and the fact that the cliched romantic ever after isn't ever really considered or even thought about. Bloody Mary being a ship does kind of mess with this very beloved interpretation. Obviously this is all fanon and fans can do whatever they want, as they always have been known to do. But I do think the ship could be considered to kind of fix a non-conformative, non-romantic ending. And it does make me sad to see the crowd of people who were initially so happy about Grace's aromantic or asexual representation kind of getting drowned out by the Bloody Mary shippers, even though it isn't intentional. Also, something that I haven't really seen a lot of people bring up is that some fan artists do tend to draw Simon as just some random white guy. I'm not going to show examples for obvious reasons, and I don't want to imply that this is everyone because it's really not, but it is a good fair chunk. I think it is partly because people don't want to make him too Markiplier-y in the same way that the drawings of Grace don't really look like Ryan Gosling. But maybe a potentially worse faith take is that people don't really seem to be that comfortable with drawing Korean features generally. Bloodymary as a ship is pretty much popular for the same reasons that any other ship gets popular. And those reasons are very boring, everyone has their own opinion and own interpretation of why it works. Project Hail Mary was already a really interesting case of fans creating such a deep and rich and detailed fanon, so I think adding the Iron Lung universe to that pre-established fanon just kind of helped elevate the groundwork further. Crossovers to me personally are both a really lovely example of fans doing the fan culture thing of reinventing and reinterpreting original media and the positive collaborative effort of the internet. Grace, Simon and all their alien friends probably aren't going to stick around forever, but getting to see a big collaborative crossover event like this, especially when the internet seems to be so divided at every turn lately, has been really encouraging and heartwarming. I hope all those little aliens and that one human are taking their time enjoying our planet. I know this video hasn't been very structured or comprehensive, but I've just been really enjoying seeing this big collaborative effort unfold in real time. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I want to give a special shout out to all of the artists whose fan art I shared. They're all incredibly talented and really intelligent. To be honest, they pretty much just said every point that I thought of on my own, and I was like, okay, maybe you guys should be making this video. But anyway, definitely do go check them out. If you like this video, please subscribe to see more, and goodbye, have a good day, bye!